I hereby solemnly swear to give a better effort in this video than Nikita Kucherov did in the All-Star Skills competition. Hi everyone, Sammy Flair here. Welcome back to Bolt Action, the series where, for the very first time, I get to show this thing off. I brought up in the last video that I really love this design. I love this Gasparilla themed jersey. There's part of me that thinks that this should be the team's third jersey. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually really like that black third jersey that they just brought out, especially with the matte black helmet. It's such a good look. And I had mentioned how much I wanted one of these, but it was on such a limited run and it was highly unlikely that I was going to get one of those magical spots in line, and I probably couldn't have even afforded it even if I did get one of those spots in line. And lo and behold, who comes through except my big brother? Like, he knew I wanted one and he got one, shipped it out to me. I'm so incredibly thankful. I love this jersey so much. But we have a lot of things to talk about in today's video, so let's just dive right in, shall we? Since I last saw you, the Lightning have played 5 games, 4 of which were on the road. They lost a back-to-back against the Islanders and the Rangers in New York. They then went to Columbus and won. They went to Boston and won in the shootout before finally coming back home and winning against Colorado at home. I mentioned in a previous video, and probably in one of my Twitch streams recently, because shock of the century, I like to talk about hockey on Twitch as well. I had mentioned that this period for the Lightning, despite the fact that they have one of the easier strength of schedules in the second half of the season, this 5-game block, and I'll include a 6th game as they're going to play the Florida Panthers today, was probably their toughest for the rest of the season. Of the 5 teams that I just mentioned, 4 of them are in playoff contention, and you can probably go so far as to say that 3 of them are pretty well locked for the playoffs at this point, them being the Rangers, the Bruins, and the Avalanche. And if I can include today's game against the Florida Panthers, which has not happened yet, then that means that 5 out of your last 6 opponents have been in playoff contention, 4 of which I would say are pretty much playoff locks, because the Atlantic right now, it's probably going to be Boston or Florida. We don't know which one's going to win the division. I had also mentioned previously that going into this week's set of games, in Boston, at home against Colorado, at home against Florida, you need at least one of those. The ideal situation is 2. Actually, the ideal situation is you get all 3, but a realistic measure of success is you beat 2 out of those teams, because those are 3 very good teams. That game against Boston may have been one of the most complete team performances that we have seen all season, and especially against Boston. There's rivalry, there's bad blood, and you know that if you're going to have any success in the playoffs, odds are you're going to be playing Boston at some point. And so you take that confidence and you go into the homestand starting against Colorado, and admittedly, Colorado is a little bit on the downswing. They haven't been quite performing as of late, outside of, Nathan MacKinnon. Alexander Georgiev is taking the night off, so now you're playing against backup goaltender, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this name, Justus Annunen? The guy's got 4 N's in his last name, and I'm pretty sure you individually pronounce each and every one of them. I think it's Annunen, but it's still the Colorado Avalanche. It's still a very good team. You have to respect that. They have won a Stanley Cup in very recent memory against you, by the way. And as I was sitting down writing out what I wanted to discuss today, a thought crossed my mind of how much emphasis do you place on any one of these games in particular? Because at the end of the season, you are judged by your entire body of work on all 82 games that you played. So does one game really make that much of a difference? How much emphasis do you place on any one game in particular? I ask that because this set began with back-to-back losses on the road, admittedly, against the Rangers and the Islanders. And in one of those games, lost Mikhail Sergachev. We're going to get there in a minute. And I don't care what team you root for out there. I think there is an underlying agreement, an underlying assent amongst fan bases, maybe even within organizations, though I can't prove it, that yes, every game counts exactly the same, right? You have 82 games, and in every single one of them, if you win, you get 2 points. If you lose in overtime or the shootout, you get 1 point. If you lose in regulation, you get 0 points. That never changes. But not every game is created equally. So as a first example, let's look at the game against the Rangers. In a vacuum, if that is the only game on your schedule for that week, then you are preparing for one of the best teams in the league. They are in first in the Metro Division by a substantial margin. You know what caliber of team you're going up against. So if you win, you feel great about yourself. If you lose, but you're competitive, you maybe don't feel as great about yourself, but still pretty good, and we can hang with this team in the playoffs. And if you get blown out, maybe you don't feel so good about yourself. But throw in the mix that you also lost Mikhail Sergachev during that game, and you only lost by 2 goals. I think you can kind of write that one off and say, there's some good things to take away from this, brush it off, be a goldfish, and move on. Now, if you take that same exercise and make it against the Islanders instead, now you're playing against a team that is on the fringes of the playoffs. They have been floundering as of late. They don't look very good. You should be able to, on any given night, walk into New York, and you should be able to have your way with this team, right? But lo and behold, you lose that game. You get blown out. It's 6-2. You do not look good the entire night. New York is having their way with you instead, and you just have to ask, what did we do wrong, and how much emphasis do I put on this loss? Here's why not all games are created equally, and why I have trouble deciding how much emphasis to put on any one game in particular. Yes, if the Islanders are your only game for the week, you should have won that game. But considering the fact that the night before, you lost your second best defenseman, considering that on this night you are playing your backup goaltender, okay? Considering that you're on the second half of back-to-back with travel, but you don't have a ton of travel because they're still both New York City teams, I think you're a little bit more forgiven in dropping the second half of that back-to-back in particular, and I don't think that that game against the Islanders tells the whole story of who this Lightning team is. Don't get me wrong, in the standings, still counts as 2 games. You still got 0 points in each of those games, and you're going to pay the price for that in the long run. Your final position will reflect the fact that you lost both of those games. But taking the whole season as it is, taking the progress that the Lightning have made in the second half of this season already, I think you are more willing to write off those back-to-back losses against the Rangers and the Islanders and say, yep, those weren't great, not our best showing of the season, but here are the things we can take on from it. Let's put a better effort into Columbus, to Boston, to Colorado, to Florida, and beyond. And you can do this exercise with the other 3 games that came after this. Let's blow through it real quick, shall we? So, Columbus. On any given night, you should walk into Columbus and you should beat the Blue Jackets. Congratulations, you did exactly that. It was closer in the third period than it needed to be, but you still got the job done. How much emphasis do you place on this game? Well, I would say you met expectations. You did what was expected of you, so maybe not a ton of emphasis on this game. How about Boston a couple nights later? A lot of factors in play here. It's a division rival, a hated division rival at that. At the time, Boston was in first in the Atlantic. You know this is a playoff team. You know the style that they play. You know what you have to do to be competitive against them, but you're also not going to be kicking yourself if you lose this game. But it's a hard-fought game, and you win. Doesn't matter that it's in the shootout. You came away with the win. Congratulations. How much emphasis do you put on this game over here? Well, definitely more than you put on Columbus. I would say you didn't meet expectations. I would say you exceeded expectations, and you did something that we all knew you were capable of, that we hoped you would do, but we weren't going to hate you if you lost to Boston in Boston. So yeah, more emphasis here. How about Colorado right after that? You have Colorado at home. Again, playoff caliber team. You know how hard they play. I know. Backup goalie and net, not the strongest point of their season right now, but you still get the job done. And it's a hard-fought game. It's 3-3 in the third period, and then you decide that you're going to take over. We're thrilled for that. How much emphasis do you put on this game over here? Well, probably a little bit less than Boston, because Boston is in your more immediate future for the playoffs, but still playoff caliber team. So less emphasis than Boston, more emphasis than Columbus. Look, at the end of the day, here's the point that I want to make. As tough as it is to decide how much emphasis to put on any individual game, here's the point I want to make. You still have to play the schedule that's placed in front of you, regardless of the circumstances. It sucks that the Lightning lost Mikhail Sergachev for the second time this season, and probably now for the rest of the season. It sucks that the Lightning were without Andrei Vasilevsky for the first 20 games of this season. It sucks that the Lightning's team defense was one of the worst in the league for the first 30 or so games of this season. At the end of the day, I think it is so much less about who you are playing against and more how you are playing as a team. And by that metric right there, and yes, I guess part of it you can call the eye test, even though the eye test drives me crazy for so many other reasons. I think there is a lot of good that you can take away from this Lightning team right now. There are so many good things to look forward to in the future. And if they end up losing today against the Panthers, I'm not going to sweat it that much. I want to talk about two more things real quick. One of them more serious, one more silly. So let's start with the serious one. Let's start with Mikhail Sergachev. I've been bringing it up several times throughout this video. Mikhail Sergachev, really fresh, back on the ice from his previous injury, from his previous recovery, goes into the game against the Rangers, and he lays an awkward hit and crumbles on the ice. It looks so brutal. The immediate thought I had was he tore his ACL, his season is done. Come to find out, he didn't tear his ACL, he broke his leg, so it's not exactly better. He's still out for the rest of the season easily, and I just can't foresee that he's going to make a return in time for the playoffs. And first of all, people were making fun of Sergachev on Instagram because he wrote an impassioned speech about how this wasn't fair, about how much this sucks. And I'm just like, what? Like, really? Are you actually going to kick a person when they're down? I understand if somebody is your rival and you don't like them and you want to taunt them and troll them, but really? Guy just actually broke his leg. He is heartbroken. He is away from his team. He can't contribute to his team's success for the rest of this year, most likely. And your response is, why don't you go cry about it? Come on, grow up. I don't care if the player is someone you hate on a team that you hate, still a human being. Don't root for injuries to happen. Have a little compassion. That's all I'm saying there. But the big question on my mind now is, what do you do in Mikhail Sergachev's absence? Because let's just remember, he broke his leg. He's not coming back this season. He's not coming back in the postseason. Okay, this is not going to be another the Lightning are trying to do long-term injured reserve cap shenanigans. No, he broke his actual leg. You saw it happen. If you're Julien BriseBois, do you try to ride out the rest of this blue line core as it is? Because your most seasoned defensemen right now are Victor Hedman and Erik Cernak, two very high quality names, but then filling out the rest of that D core, you have some first year players on this team, you have some young players, you have some journeymen. It's kind of a mishmash right now. And while I think that they're going to take the opportunity to continue to develop some of the younger players like Emil Lilleberg, like Maxwell Crozier, like Declan Carlisle, I don't think that is the solution as you are heading into the end of February, the month of March, and as you're staring down being in the playoffs. Julien BriseBois has made it abundantly clear that he wants to be competitive year over year. And so if you go and get a guy like Tyson Barrie, you are saying we're going to use up the most cap space that we can right now with our LTIR pool, and we want to be competitive right here, right now. I don't know, but my gut tells me that the Lightning are probably moving towards acquiring Tyson Barrie at the trade deadline. We'll see what happens. That's the serious thing out of the way. Let's talk about the silly thing, and I made a joke about it in the intro of the video. Nikita Kucherov, as good as he is, as much of a superstar as he is, he kind of phoned it in for the skills competition, didn't he? And this will come to no surprise for anybody that it didn't get the best reaction across the league. Fans were upset that he wasn't participating as hard as he could have been. The broadcasters were not terribly happy with him either. I have to imagine that the league wasn't terribly happy with him either. So what was actually going on? Was Kucherov being a massive troll because he was in Toronto? I don't know. It's a possibility. Did Nikita Kucherov actually not want to be at the All-Star events instead of, maybe being on a beach somewhere? I don't know. It's a distinct possibility. But what I do know is that while it is the most fun, it is the maybe most pointless All-Star week in the big four sports in America, at the very least. The NHL knows that there is such little incentive for the players to want to come and participate well at this event. That's why they tried to add this $1 million prize on for the skills competition specifically. And I know why the NHL does this, okay? I truly do. But if a player opts out of participating in any of the All-Star activities, you say, no, I don't want to be an All-Star this year. I don't want to do the skills competition. I don't want to do the All-Star game. I don't want all of this. You receive a 1-game suspension. And I would say in most cases, players aren't going to opt out of that because it's whatever. They get to go and hang out with some of the best players from around the league. It's whatever. But we've seen Alex Ovechkin opt out of it, I think twice. We've seen Marc-Andre Fleury opt out of it at least once. Maybe it's a little bit cynical on my part, but I don't see that the players themselves that get chosen for All-Star activities have really any incentive to go and do this if the idea is to promote the league that continues to not make sense, the league that continues to not look out for player safety, league that continues to make boneheaded decisions about, injuries and protocols and salary cap and suspensions and everything else. Is there any player out there that really has this enamored feeling towards the league that says, yes, I want to give up of myself to help the league promote itself? Yeah, instead of me promoting myself, that's a thing I'm gonna do. Because let's call it what it is. The league takes All-Star Weekend so much more seriously than any of the players do, and that's okay. The NHL is trying to market itself. It is trying to promote its own product. They are trying to make All-Star Weekends much more fun and accessible than it has been in years past. And here's the kicker. It's not going to be back for at least 3 years because of the Four Nations tournament and the Olympics. So did you really need that much emphasis on it? To me, it's not a big deal that Kucherov phoned it in for the skills competition. He still put on a good show for the All-Star game itself. He embraced the role of being the crowd villain. They were booing him and he was smiling and waving back at him, much like Brad Marchand did when the All-Star game was hosted in Tampa. Everybody needs a good villain story, right? Why are we taking it so seriously? And the most hilarious, the coldest takes that I saw on Twitter were people that were calling for Nikita Kucherov to be suspended because of his performance at the All-Star game. Like, not even 1 game. They wanted a multiple game suspension for Nikita Kucherov for phoning it in for a game that didn't matter, that he didn't get paid for, not all. Yeah, suspend that man. I get it from all sides, and I'm not going to say that Nikita Kucherov did the right thing, but he did do the funny thing. And since we're on the topic of Nikita Kucherov, let me take this opportunity to mention that he is still the league leader in points at this point in the season. He has 93 points. He is 4 ahead of Nathan MacKinnon at 89, and Connor McDavid is shooting his way up the standings. He's got 80 points. He had a monster of a night the other night, 6 assists. Pretty soon here in the near future, I'm gonna make a video about the Hart Trophy conversation, not the Art Ross Trophy. Okay, that is purely a points trophy at the end of the season. I'm talking about the discussion for MVP, which right now seems to circulate around Nikita Kucherov, Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, and a handful of other names. But it's essentially a 3-horse race right now. So look forward to that in the future. In the meantime, here are the games that we can look forward to for next week's video. As I mentioned earlier, the Lightning are playing in-state rival Florida Panthers this afternoon. That's February 17th. They finish out the homestand with games against the Ottawa Senators on the 19th and the Washington Capitals on the 22nd. A quick plug for a different video that I put out the other day. I streamed this live on Twitch a couple weeks ago, but I edited it down. Edited it. I did that thing, and it's now on my YouTube page. Essentially what it was is I took 3 of my friends who knew absolutely nothing about the sport of hockey, and I asked them obscure trivia questions to see if they could even get in the ballpark, and if they couldn't, to see what funny answers they could come up with. So if that's a video that you're interested in watching, click the annotation up at the top of the video right now. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for giving me just a little bit of your time. I hope you are as excited for the second half of this season, for the trade deadline, for the playoff push that I am, and I'm going to be doing my best to cover it the whole way through. But until I see you again, remember, go Bolts, and it's only a game. Don't be mad at Kucherov.